Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya and welcome to another episode of TFiR Let's Talk. And today we have with us Matthew LeRay, co-founder and CTO of Speedscale. Matthew, it's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
Yeah, since this is the first time I'm hosting you, so I'm kind of also interested in learning a bit more about the company. And since you're a co-founder, who else would be the better person to talk about the story of the company? So let's start, why you created the company, what problem you saw in this space.
Yeah, so we created Speedscale to try to improve the lives of developers by making it easier to produce quality software. So one of the things we saw, I've been in the monitoring space for about 20 years. And one of the things I've always been frustrated by is that observability or monitoring software always catches problems after users have already experienced them. And so I felt that it was time for us to try to solve the problem a little bit earlier in the life cycle. And that's the genesis of Speedscale.
Excellent. Now, since you brought up monitoring, can you also talk about the kind of importance of monitoring? Also when we talk about monitoring, we can, once again, in the cloud native world, there are so many jargons, so many labels, so many tags. We can talk about observability, we can talk about understandability. So what is the category? What is the space that you work in? You did mention that, before things happen, not, hey, you're not sitting there and observing something once it has happened. So talk about that.
Yeah. So your traditional observability vendors tend to focus on finding, being alerted to problems. So you'll hear talks about like metrics, traces, logs, et cetera. And that's all wonderful. Those are great tools and you should definitely use them. However, Speedscale does something slightly different. What we do is monitor production systems and try to increase their debuggability. And the way that we do that is through something called traffic replay. So traffic replay, the real easy way of understanding it is we see everything going on in a production cloud native system and we record the real transaction. And then we not only allow people to look at what happens, like look at what users are doing, but we also, more importantly, bring that back to the developer's desktop and allow all of that, all of those user interactions to be reused as part of the development process, as well as part of the validation process in the CI/CD pipeline.
How you make it easy? What is the impact on developers' life directly when they, look at Speedscale?
Yeah, so one of our missions at Speedscale is to eliminate integration testing, traditional integration testing. So every developer hates the toil of writing tests. I've been an engineer my whole career, and I am very bad at picking the things that will break in an application. And I think when you get into cloud native architectures, that defect, that complexity becomes unmanageable. The systems change too much is being handled by the infrastructure, Kubernetes, or whatever system you're on. And so you need to take a more automated approach. Engineer hates writing tests. Every engineer isn't good at writing tests because the code you wrote, it's very hard to figure out how it might break because you've been so focused on making it work properly. So what Speedscale does to make developers' lives better is we go and record what real people do, real users do, and we take away the burden of having to write that test. And more importantly, we take away the need to have development environments. So part of what the Speedscale process is, this traffic replay process, is actually copying the production environment and the traffic and then just bring it back home to where the developer can just run against it over and over, and they can use the real test instead of having to, imagine what might happen in the real world.
This is a crowded space. There are a lot of players, Sometimes you end up creating new categories. Sometimes you create a subcategory. Sometimes you bring a product which is in existing category. So if I look at a Speedscale, you did mention that you, before things happen, before monitoring. So explain, where do you fit in this larger cloud native space?
That's a great question. And I would say that we're still figuring that out. And that probably means that we are either a subcategory or a new category. We sometimes get miscategorized as API testing, which is a very mature space, and there's lots of great tools there. That's not strictly what we do. We're kind of this new wave of cloud native quality solutions. We're like a little bit of observability, little bit of testing, little bit of environment management, kind of all rolled into one. So my belief as a startup founder is that when you look, 4 or 5 years from now, as they're doing market analysis, what we're doing will become part of the standard operating procedure for people in this market, meaning the quality market, whether it's observability or testing. I think those things will kind of collide a little bit, and that it'll start to look like that. But as of now, we're still figuring that out.
In terms of technology, we do talk about this a lot, which is about technology and social or cultural. So if you look at the monitoring space itself, how much do you think cultural changes are needed, or to just change the mindset about it? That you have to look at things before something goes wrong, and how does Speedscale play there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're asking about the cultural shift in the monitoring and observability space and how we can help drive that at Speedscale. So traditionally, being on call has been a nightmare for engineers. Everyone hates holding the pager, right, for the production system. And so what you've seen over time is really two key things. One is that engineers have really started to push back on that. And then the organizations want the engineers in production. That we called it DevOps, I think, and now we call it cloud native. And so there's this cultural shift of really owning the software all the way through into production. And so a lot of high performing organizations do that. The problem is that that creates a nightmare for the people involved. It burns out engineers. It contributes to the talent shortage that we're all suffering with, because no engineer wants to be on call. And part of the reason that happens, I believe, is that the tools that they're using were not built for cloud native. The observability tools, some of them are maturing, and that's great, but they're always going to be catching things after they happen. And so Speedscale is one of the only tools on the market that allows customers to actually learn from the past in great detail and bring it all the way back into to the developer's hands. Everything else that I know of is showing developers summaries, saying, hey, here's a summary of what happened. Here's what we think, here's kind of the roll up or the metric of what happened, or maybe a log or a trace. Whereas what Speedscale is doing is saying, we can actually reproduce that transaction and bring it right back for you. Go ahead and run your debugger against it.
What is your growth plan? Who are your investors?
Yeah, so Speedscale is a seed stage startup. We're sort of rapidly progressing from the seed stage, but we're currently seed stage. We've raised about $3.5 million, right? That's all publicly available. And how many people we have depends on whether you count consultants or not, but we're around 10 people, let's say. So we're still relatively new, and we are maturing with the cloud native ecosystem. We're roughly 2 years old. Now, as far as investors, we have the privilege of working with some top tier investors, such as Sierra Ventures. We also Tech Square Ventures, which is a local Atlanta. So we have a little bit of West Coast and East Coast. And of course, we also went through Y Combinator, which was a wonderful experience, and they're also an investor.
What is your superpower?
So our superpower is saving developers time and preventing them from getting woken up in the middle of the night with production outages. That's our superpower.
What is your end game? This is very early on. So are you looking for, being acquired by, or you want to continue to run as a, independent company? What's your plans long term?
So obviously we believe that our idea and our approach to automating quality has a lot of legs, potentially all the way to IPO. Obviously, being realistic, there's many off-ramps on the journey of running a startup, and we're open to many off-ramps, but we believe that this can go all the way. It's been a long time since any company has really rethought this market in this space, at kind of a fundamental level, and we have the opportunity to do that. So, we're going to have to see exactly where we end up.
What does your offering look like so that, folks can have, kind of an overview of what to expect from Speedscale?
Yeah, so the first and easiest thing is to just go to our GitHub repository, and we give away what we call our CLI, or command line interface, that will allow you to get visibility into desktop applications right out of the gate, and it'll actually allow you to export into popular load testing tools like K6. So we felt that in order to give to the community and to be relevant, that we should go and give some of the best stuff that we have away, which is that visibility and observability, and then ability to generate load tests. So you can go to our website. That's the easiest way to go get started, is go to speedscale.com. Now, beyond that, we offer very, very low cost startup plans, and all the way up to large enterprises. And as you'll see on our website, we have a number of very large enterprise customers that get a lot of value out of Speedscale. really kind of choose your own adventure. Typically what causes people to go to the pro plan is when they need to, either they have a lot of data, right, and they need some of the more sophisticated features that we have, or when they need to implement us in their CI/CD system. When you get into that level, you need the support of our enterprise team.
What kind of users are there, and also if you can talk about broadly use cases.
Users wise, we have everything from seed stage startups all the way to major retailers, major restaurant chains, both here in the United States and globally, right? So it's kind of a wide cross section. The thing we tend to think about is a lot of the technology we build for this cutting edge cloud native company. And so we test a lot of our ideas with startups. And then when we want to take it to that enterprise level, that's where we're very fortunate, very, very fortunate to have very large enterprise customers that are willing to, they're only a few steps behind the startups. And so then we can take it to market with them. So we kind of have this wide gamut of customers, and we are SOC 2 compliant. For example, we have all the enterprise certifications, and this was built for privacy and for those type of larger company concerns. As far as use cases, this is where I kind of get excited, is because this is where people really enjoy using Speedscale. Let's take a specific example. We had a customer the other day who said he was having an argument between two teams. So anybody who works at a large company knows teams are always battling it out between, I own this service, you own that service. And he said, I swear this particular transaction is slow. And so what we were able to show by just installing Speedscale is we solved an observability use case of saying, this particular transaction is taking 83 seconds, which is actually a record in our company's history of slowest transactions. It's taking 83 seconds, and they weren't catching it before because it was about the nuance of the search they were running. The transaction was fast most of the time. And so then they could see that it was under only one specific situation. And that's the kind of things that you won't find from big aggregations and summaries. The second big use case that gets folks super excited is one of our large customers in India. Actually, they are continuously refreshing their CI system with new copies of production traffic. So they're always changing their application, and they always have somebody running new kinds of queries and buying different things and all that. And so with Speedscale, they'll capture like an hour's worth of traffic, then they'll bring it back into the CI system so that the developers are always getting tested against the real world on an ongoing basis, always updating. And so those are kind of the two big use cases that that really kind of hit it out of the park for folks.
Matthew, thank you so much for taking time out today, and of course share the history and the story of Speedscale, which is kind of relatively new but also old in the cloud world. And thanks for also sharing those insights. And I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.